The air in the room is thick and silent, heavy with the ghost of furniture. Dust motes dance in the single shaft of light cutting through the grime on the window. My hands are trembling, not from cold, but from the sheer, brutal finality of the gesture. I hold out the papers. His face. It just crumpled, like a paper bag dropped in the rain. The color drains from his cheeks, leaving behind a pasty, ashen mask. His eyes, wide and suddenly vacant, fix on the document, then on me. There's a sound in his throat, a choked gasp that claws its way out, ragged and desperate. He reaches for the wall, missing it. His knees buckle. He goes down in a heap on the bare floorboards, amidst the echoes of a life he'd casually tried to dismantle. The silence rushes back in, deafening now, amplifying the ragged sound of his breathing, the quiet thud of his collapse. This is it. The end of the line he drew in the sand, the line he thought I'd never cross. He built his trap, but he never imagined I'd use it to bury him in the wreckage of his own making. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps me more than you know. Life just a year ago felt solid. Unremarkable, maybe, but solid. We lived in a house with good bones, the kind that settled into the earth like it belonged there. A quiet street, old trees, paint peeling just enough to feel authentic, not neglected. It was our place, our foundation. 10 years building it, brick by brick, memory by memory. We weren't rich, not by a long shot. But we had comfort. We had security. He had a steady job, I worked freelance, juggling deadlines and dinner plans. The mortgage was manageable, a familiar weight we carried together, a shared responsibility that felt like the grown-up version of holding hands. We talked about the future, about maybe adding a sunroom one day, about the garden I planned to fill with herbs and roses, about growing old together in the space we were carving out for ourselves. It wasn't a fairy tale, but it was ours. It felt safe, rooted. I poured everything into that house, into that life. My time, my energy, my dreams. It wasn't just a building. It was the physical manifestation of my belief in us. Every nail hammered, every wall painted, every creaking floorboard was a testament to a shared history, a shared future. The smell of old wood and brewing coffee in the morning, the way the light hit the living room in the late afternoon, the sound of rain on the roof. These weren't just sensory details, they were the fabric of my existence, woven with threads of trust and quiet certainty. I felt secure, grounded, loved in the comfortable, everyday way that feels more real than grand gestures. He was my partner, my safe harbor, or so I believed. The first hint wasn't a bang, but a whisper. A stray envelope on the counter, addressed only to him. Usually, I respected his privacy, but this one felt off. Corporate-looking, unfamiliar bank logo. My fingers itched. I told myself it was nothing. Probably something work-related. He'd been a little distant lately, preoccupied. Late nights at the office, he said. Stress from a big project. I'd bought it, because why wouldn't I? He was my husband. We shared everything. But the envelope felt heavy in my hand. Curiosity turned into a knot in my stomach. It sat there for a day, too. Every time I walked past, it seemed to pulse with a silent accusation. Finally, the knot twisted too tight. I picked it up. It wasn't sealed well. A corner was slightly bent, enough to glimpse the title. Mortgage statement, my brow furrowed. We got our regular statement every month. This was different. I slid the paper out. The words swam before my eyes. Second mortgage, a 6-figure loan. On our house. Taken out months ago. In his name only. Without a single word to me. The world didn't tilt. It shattered. It exploded into a million jagged pieces, sharp and lethal. The air left my lungs. I stumbled, bracing myself against the counter, the cold formica suddenly alien beneath my trembling hands. My breath hitched, ragged and shallow. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. Disbelief warred with a cold, dawning horror.
How? Why?
How could he do this? How could he make such a monumental decision, involving our home, our shared security, without even telling me. He walked in then, keys jingling. "Hey," he said, his voice too casual, too bright. He stopped dead when he saw the paper in my hand, saw my face. The casual mask dropped, replaced by something I couldn't quite read. Fear? Guilt? Defiance? "What is this?" My voice was barely a whisper, raw with shock. He swallowed hard. His eyes darted around the room. Anywhere but at me. "Honey, I can explain." "Explain what?" I managed to choke out, holding up the statement. "Explain how you mortgaged our house behind my back." The explanations tumbled out, a tangled mess of corporate jargon, vague opportunities, and supposed investments.
It was a sure thing, he said.
A chance to get ahead, to secure our future. He hadn't told me because he didn't want to worry me. Because it was complicated, because he wanted to surprise me with the profits.
Lies.
Every single word felt like a brick hitting me in the chest. It wasn't just the debt, the terrifying amount of money involved. It was the secrecy, the betrayal, the fundamental breach of trust that hollowed me out from the inside. He had made a massive decision about our life, our shared asset, in total isolation. He had gambled with our security, our home, my peace of mind, without my knowledge, without my consent. The argument started that night, and rarely stopped for months. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. Every conversation circled back to the debt, the lie, the gaping wound he'd torn in our marriage. He was defensive, then apologetic, then angry that I wasn't just accepting his explanation. He minimized my fear, calling me dramatic, saying I didn't understand business. Business? This wasn't business. This was our home. This was our life. I scrambled to understand the implications. I called the bank listed on the statement, pretending to be him, asking general questions about second mortgages. The cold efficiency of the loan officer on the other end only deepened my dread. I researched online, diving into the terrifying world of debt, interest rates, and foreclosure. The numbers swam before my eyes, enormous and menacing. The payments on this second mortgage were staggering, easily a third of his take-home pay. How had he planned to manage this? His sure-thing investment wasn't yielding returns. It seemed to be nothing, just a hole he'd dug and thrown money into. Our careful budget, the one we'd built together, was a joke now. It was like trying to bail out a sinking boat with a teacup. Money disappeared before it even hit the bank account. The atmosphere in the house shifted. It became tense, brittle. Every unexpected bill, every car repair, every trip to the grocery store became a potential flashpoint. We ate cheaper food, stopped going out, canceled plans with friends. The joy drained out of our lives, replaced by a low hum of anxiety and resentment. I felt trapped. Utterly and completely trapped. Our home, the place that was supposed to be my sanctuary, now felt like a cage, albeit one with increasingly unaffordable bars. I couldn't leave. I had nowhere to go and no money to go with. And even if I could, legally disentangling myself from this mess felt impossible. Was I liable for this debt, even though my name wasn't on the loan? The legal landscape felt like a minefield I was forced to navigate blindfolded. I tried to make him see the reality, the danger we were in. I brought him printouts of our dwindling bank balance, spreadsheets showing the impossible math of his debt. He would nod, promise to do better, promise to cut back, promise to figure something out. But nothing changed. The spending habits didn't stop entirely. Little things at first, a new gadget, an expensive dinner out with a client he swore was crucial for work, new clothes he needed. It was like the gravity of the situation hadn't truly penetrated, or maybe he simply didn't care as much as he cared about whatever phantom opportunity he was chasing. The lies continued, small ones layered on top of the big one, creating a suffocating blanket of deceit. I felt like I was losing my mind. The stress was physical. I lost weight. My hair started to thin. Sleep offered no rest, only restless tossing and turning filled with nightmares of eviction notices and debt collectors. I watched him, this man I had built my life with, and he felt like a stranger. The person I thought I knew wouldn't do this. The person I loved wouldn't knowingly put our home, my security, at such risk, and then lie about it, and continue to lie. The betrayal wasn't just financial, it was existential. He had betrayed my trust, my faith, my very identity as his partner. The house began to feel less like a home and more like a monument to his folly and my despair. The walls seemed to press in on me. Every corner whispered his lie. I couldn't look at the garden without thinking about the second mortgage payments, draining the life out of our finances. I couldn't sit on the couch without remembering the night I found the statement. The air tasted of dust and resentment. It was poisoning me, slowly, surely. I remember one night, sitting alone in the living room, the only light from a single lamp. He was asleep, or pretending to be. I held a photo album, flipping through pictures of happier times, our wedding, vacations, lazy weekends at home. Faces smiling, eyes full of hope. It felt like looking at strangers. Who were those people? Where had they gone? A profound sadness washed over me, so deep it felt like drowning. I wasn't just losing my home, I was losing my past, my present, and the future I had envisioned. And in that moment, something shifted. The sadness didn't lift, but it changed form. It hardened. It became a cold, sharp anger. Not the hot, volatile kind that explodes and fades, but a deep, steady burn. A realization settled over me, heavy and undeniable. He wasn't going to fix this. He was incapable, or unwilling, or both. I was waiting for him to be the man I thought he was, the partner who would fight alongside me to save us. But that man wasn't there. He had disappeared the moment he signed those papers in secret. If I was going to survive this, I had to save myself. Waiting for him was a death sentence. The anger gave me a new kind of clarity, stark and brutal. I had been operating from a place of hurt and fear, hoping he would somehow undo the damage. But hope was a luxury I could no longer afford. I needed to think like a survivor. I needed to think like he had strategically, self-preservation first. A cold steel core began to form in my gut, replacing the churning anxiety. The tears stopped. The pleading stopped. I went quiet. This shift wasn't sudden or dramatic from the outside. I didn't have a grand revelation that I announced to him. It happened internally, a quiet, chilling transformation. I started listening differently, watching him with new eyes. Not eyes clouded by love or disappointment, but by objective assessment. What were his patterns? His weaknesses? What did he value most? What was his blind spot? It became clear his blind spot was me. He saw me as the worried wife, the emotional one, the one who would ultimately follow his lead, or just crumble under pressure. He never saw me as a threat. I started doing my own research again, but this time with a different goal. Not how to save us, but how to save me. I focused on the legal aspects, digging into property laws, marital debt, and the mechanics of foreclosure and sale. I learned about deficiency judgments. What happens when a house sells for less than the amount owed on the mortgages? I learned whose name needed to be on which loan document. The details were dry, complex, but I devoured them. It felt like learning the rules of a game I hadn't known I was playing, a game where the stakes were my entire future. My quietness must have lulled him into a false sense of security. He probably thought I was finally accepting the situation, resigning myself to our fate, his fate. He even seemed to relax a little. The arguments dwindled. He started making vague, optimistic comments about his investments again, about how things were turning around. It was agonizing to listen to, knowing the truth, knowing the precarious edge we were teetering on. I would just nod, offering non-committal murmurs. Inside, I was building a fortress. Meanwhile, the situation was deteriorating rapidly. His investments never materialized. The payments on the second mortgage became impossible to meet, even with severe cuts to our household spending. He started juggling payments, skipping 1 month here, making a partial payment there. The notices from the bank became more frequent, more aggressive. Certified letters arrived, thick envelopes filled with legalese that screamed impending disaster. Foreclosure was no longer a distant possibility. It was a looming certainty. He became more desperate, more erratic. He started blaming external factors, the economy, his boss, even me, for not being supportive enough. He paced the floor late at night, talking to himself, muttering about schemes and opportunities that sounded increasingly delusional. The house, my safe haven, felt like a cage shared with a desperate, cornered animal. The air crackled with tension. Every phone call was a potential disaster. Every knock on the door sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. I watched him spiral, and a part of me, a small, sad part, felt a pang of something that might have once been pity. But it was quickly overshadowed by the cold calculation that had become my guiding principle. His desperation was a distraction. While he flailed and blamed, I worked. I found a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, but one recommended for their experience in real estate law and tricky marital situations. I was upfront with her. I laid out everything: the secret mortgage, the depth of the debt, the impending foreclosure, my desire to protect myself, and, crucially, my legal position regarding the second mortgage. My name wasn't on it, only the first one. She listened patiently, asked sharp, pointed questions. She explained the options, the risks, the potential outcomes. And then she explained the leverage I had. The first mortgage was in both our names. The second mortgage was only in his. If the house went to foreclosure, the first mortgage would be paid off first from the sale proceeds. The second mortgage holder would get whatever was left. If the sale price didn't cover both mortgages, the second mortgage holder could pursue him personally for the remaining balance. The deficiency, since my name wasn't on that loan, I was not directly liable for that deficiency. And there was another angle: a voluntary sale. If we sold the house before foreclosure, the same principle applied. The first mortgage would be paid off. The second mortgage would get the rest. And he would still be on the hook for any deficiency on his loan. The key was that the second mortgage holder had a lien on the house, but their personal claim was primarily against him. The lawyer confirmed my research. My name was not on the second mortgage note. This was the critical detail. This was the key that unlocked the cage. The decision solidified, cold and hard. It wasn't about saving the house anymore. It wasn't about saving the marriage. It was about survival. His actions had put me in a position where my financial future was on the line. He had gambled everything we had and lost. Now, I would use the legal fallout of his gamble to ensure I wasn't wiped out along with him. It felt brutal. It felt necessary. It felt like the only way out. I would sell the house, and I would leave him to face the consequences of the debt he had secretly incurred. The process was a blur of quiet, deliberate action. I contacted a realtor known for discreet sales. We listed the house slightly below market value to ensure a quick sale. I timed it carefully, coordinating with my lawyer, making sure all the legal ducks were in a row. I started packing, but only my own things, small boxes I could manage myself, storing them at a friend's place. I withdrew half the money from our joint savings account, my legal entitlement according to my lawyer, covering my contributions over the years and protecting some funds for myself. He was so consumed by his own panic, by the looming threat of foreclosure, that he barely noticed my quiet preparations. He was talking about bankruptcy now, about moving in with his parents. He was so focused on the disaster he had created, he didn't see the life raft I was building for myself. He saw me as a co-passenger on the sinking ship, not someone quietly charting a course for another shore. The offer came quickly. A cash buyer, no contingencies, fast close. It was perfect. We signed the papers, both of us, for the sale of the house and the payoff of the first mortgage. He was relieved, genuinely relieved. He thought we were escaping the foreclosure, salvaging something. He had no idea that by selling the house, he was activating the very mechanism that would leave him exposed to the full force of the second mortgage debt. He thought selling was our solution. He thought we were in this together, sharing the burden of the sale. He had no clue that I had already separated my fate from his. The closing was set for a Tuesday. I spent the weekend before moving the last of my things. He was out, supposedly meeting with a potential new employer. I cleared out my closet, emptied my drawers, took down the pictures that were only mine. I left behind everything that was jointly acquired, everything that was truly ours. The house felt empty and sad, already mourning the life that had died within its walls. On the day of the closing, I met him at the title company's office. He was nervous, fidgeting. I was calm, numb almost. We signed the final documents. The first mortgage was paid off. The remaining funds from the sale went to the second mortgage holder. It wasn't enough to cover the full amount of the second loan. Far from it. A significant balance remained. A balance that, according to the loan documents and the law, he was personally responsible for. We left the office separately. He went back to the house, presumably to start packing up the rest of the things that were now his problem. I drove to my friend's place, to the boxes containing the remnants of my life. I waited until the funds from the sale had cleared and the first mortgage was officially paid off. Then I went back to the house. This is where I came in. The house was cold, empty. The air was thick with the scent of abandonment. He was sitting on the floor in the living room, surrounded by boxes he hadn't started packing. He looked lost. I walked in, my footsteps echoing on the bare wood. He looked up, a question in his eyes. I didn't say a word. I just held out the papers. Not the sale documents he'd signed, but the final statement from the second mortgage company. The one showing the remaining balance. The one clearly stating his name as the sole borrower. He took them, his hands shaking. He read the numbers, read the name at the top. His face, just moments ago filled with relief, contorted. He looked up at me, comprehension dawning, twisting into horror.
What?
What is this? He whispered. That, I said, my voice flat, devoid of emotion, is the debt you took out. The house is sold. The first mortgage is paid. This is what's left. He stared at me, his mind clearly struggling to process. But we sold the house. It should be gone. The sale paid off the debt that was tied to the house. I explained, my voice like ice. The first mortgage was tied to the house. Your second mortgage. That was tied to you. The house is gone. The debt isn't. His eyes widened, the color draining from his face again. He crumpled the paper in his hand. You did this. You did this. I corrected him softly. You took out the loan. You did it in secret. You risked our home, our future. I just made sure your actions had the consequences you tried to avoid. His mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. He looked from the paper to me, his eyes wild with disbelief and dawning terror. The weight of the numbers on that page, the realization that he was solely responsible for this crippling debt, without the asset he'd leveraged, hit him like a physical blow. His hand went to his chest. His breath hitched. He tried to speak again, a gurgling sound escaping his throat. And then he collapsed. Not just emotionally, but physically. He folded in on himself, a heap of betrayal and ruin on the empty floor where our life used to be. I watched him fall. There was no triumph. No celebración. Just a profound, aching emptiness. I had won. I had protected myself. I had turned his weapon against him, leaving him buried under the weight of his own deceit. But the victory felt hollow. It was a win born of destruction, a survival bought at the cost of a decade of my life and the death of a future I had believed in. I stood there for a moment, the silence amplifying the sound of his ragged breathing on the floor. The house was empty, echoing. My heart was empty too, hollowed out by betrayal and the cold necessity of self-preservation. I didn't help him up. I didn't offer comfort. He had made his choice a long time ago, when he signed those papers in secret. He had chosen the debt, the lie, the risk. Now he was living with the interest. I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. The door clicked shut behind me, a quiet final sound in a story filled with too much noise. The street looked the same, the trees the same, the old house standing there looking solid from the outside, but I knew the emptiness within. My car was packed. My essential documents were with me. My name was clear, free from the chains of the second mortgage. I had lost the house, lost the marriage, lost the future I had envisioned. But I had saved myself. The aftermath isn't a tidy bow on a gift box. It's more like standing in the ruins of a collapsed building, sifting through the rubble for pieces of yourself. I found a small apartment, clean and bare. It doesn't smell like old wood and coffee. It smells like fresh paint and anonymity. There are no ghosts here, no whispers of betrayal in the corners. It's just
quiet.
Financially, I'm starting over. The money I salvaged is a lifeline, not a fortune. I work hard, building my freelance business, watching every penny. It's a different kind of security I'm building now, one based entirely on my own efforts, my own vigilance. There's a constant, low-level hum of anxiety that I doubt will ever fully dissipate, a scar left by the near disaster. I don't know what happened to him, not specifically. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he ended up living with his parents, facing the second mortgage company's collection efforts, possibly bankruptcy. His sure-thing investment evaporated, of course. The life he tried to build on a foundation of sand and lies collapsed, just as the house would have eventually, just as he did on that floor. Sometimes, late at night, the silence in the apartment feels overwhelming. I think about the house, not with longing, but with a detached sadness. It was a symbol of a life that was supposed to be, a life that was stolen from me long before I walked away. The most painful part wasn't the leaving. It was the realization that the life I mourned was already dead, poisoned from within by deceit. The betrayal changed me fundamentally. I am harder now, more cynical. Trust isn't given freely. It's something that feels terrifyingly fragile. But I am also stronger. I found a resilience I didn't know I possessed. I faced down a crisis that could have destroyed me and found a way not just to survive, but to stand on my own 2 feet, free from the debt and the lies. The victory was cold, yes, and costly. But it was mine. I chose to protect myself when the person who was supposed to protect me became the threat. And in that choice, I found a different kind of strength, a kind of freedom that comes from having faced the worst and found a way through the wreckage. The house is gone. The marriage is gone. The past is gone. But I am still here, standing. If this story hit close to home, I'd love to hear a version in the comments. Thanks for being here. Subscribing helps bring more of these to life.